kind of long distance race. Half marathon, full marathon, maybe even an ultra marathon. And somewhere in the duration of that race, there comes a time where you've given it all you can. So you've given it all you've got. And for some reason, you can't give any more. And you do what's called hitting the wall. Hitting the wall in an athletic event is kind of an interesting phenomenon. Most everyone having experienced long distance endurance running has hit the wall. And the wall represents a lot of different things. The fatigue of the body, the mental anguish you're putting yourself through. But in recovery, we look at the wall a little bit different. See, the wall in recovery could be maybe that sensitive issue or topic you don't want to talk about. Or maybe it's a fear concept, or maybe it's a trauma threshold. The wall can represent a lot of different things. But I remember one time specifically in the St. George Marathon years ago, when I first experienced the wall. It was an incredible experience as I look back at it now, but during it, it was horrible. And it happened right after mile 17. As the landscape started to change and things started to get stretched out, and all the fanfare, the half marathon, and the reality of the time and the distance I still had to go kind of started to begin to set in, I started to get some self-doubt. And that self-doubt turned into me feeling physically ill and physically drained. And once that happened, my mind jumped on and said, we gotta be done. And as I was slowing my pace down and beginning to walk a little bit more, out of the corner of my eye, I caught something interesting. It was called the meat wagon. It's a little like 12 passenger van that would scoop up the people that couldn't make it. And it was a hot day, so I remember looking in there and seeing some of the hair on some of the athletes and runners blowing in the wind, knowing that there was air conditioning in there. But I took a closer look and I started noticing that the people inside the meat wagon looked horrible. These were people that really had hit the wall hard because they were looking sickly, they were pale. It looked like someone might have been moaning. There's one that looked like she was crying. And I remember looking up at the driver of the meat wagon and him giving me one of these. And I was kind of like, no, I don't want to go in there. Look at what's in there. And it wasn't to discount any of the athletes that were in there, but I could only imagine what it smelled like, what it felt like, knowing that once they got in that van, they weren't gonna finish. And I remember this guy driving next to me kind of slow, like heckling me with his eyes and with the tempo of which he was driving the van. And I shook my head, no. And he's like, you sure? And I'm like, yeah, no, move on. And he drove away. And it was interesting because as I play that back in my head now, I remember everything about that experience. But the funny thing about the wall is that once you get past it, you get something called the second wind. It's the same thing in recovery. When you're in there producing these feelings and these emotions and you're having new experiences and you're afraid that you're gonna let go of some of this stuff, not knowing what's gonna come, does the ends justify the means to get there? Once you punch through that wall, it is one of the most liberating things you'll ever do because all it takes is for your heart, your body, and your mind to start really getting into congruence. And once you're able to punch through that wall, whether you go through it, over it, under it, around it, you get your second wind. And that's when you can go full throttle. And I'll never forget this because the wall at 18 miles kind of became a staple in my running. And I would mentally prepare for it before I hit it, to the point where I knew it was coming. And so I would start to pull back a little bit so that when miles 17 and 18 approached and I went through it, I could then turn on the gas and get through it. So athletes in recovery, we look at the same experiences. We look at things and situations by which you're gonna have to endure and get through in order to get the prize of sobriety on the other side. And it's going to be scary, and it's going to be difficult, and it's gonna look like it's the Great Wall of China and there's no way to get around it and through it, but you can do it. It's all in here, and in the body itself. Those are the attributes that'll help push you through these experiences. And once you get through it, you'll understand that your walls will change, that some of the situational issues that once held you back will now be motivation and fuel to move forward. But just like athletic sporting events and recovery alike, we are the only ones that can punch through that wall. We are the only ones that can understand the complexities of how thick and how big those walls are. And we cannot expect the driver of the meat wagon to scoop us up off the ground to place us in there and then us to have a feeling of victory and success because we gave up too soon. I'm here to tell you that the wall's never big enough, never thick enough, never long enough to justify you quitting. And what it does help you do ultimately is turn the mess into a message.